Hi, thanks for tuning in today to Front Porch Conversations. Here at Advent Christian Village, we're on the porch at the Copeland Community Center, and we have crickets in our background, that noise, and they're being accompanied by birds this morning, so it'll be a nice interview. But our real stars today are Ted and Dodie Jones. Thank you so much for coming to sit down with me and tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then more members will know about you, and I bet somebody will say, oh gosh, I didn't know that about them, or we used to live there too. So these are ways of making connections.
Good.
Let's start by where each of you were born and grew up.
I was born in the Philippines. I left there when I married Ted, my 20s.
Oh my gosh, you're going to mess up the surprise.
What surprise?
How you met, but no, go ahead.
Oh, I see. And because I left there, and
How many brothers and sisters? How many brothers and sisters?
11. I have 11 brothers and sisters. My mom and dad are all gone. My mom died when she was 98.
Fairly recently.
Yeah, fairly, almost 2 years, and dad was gone many times. He was only 62, and then I went to business school there, and came to Aurora University. I think it was still college then. For just a semester, I got pregnant. And so from then on, I have had my my degree, MRS, domestic engineer, and we've been married 51 years.
Ted, where were you born?
I was born in the capital of West Virginia, Charleston. Attended grade school, junior high, high school, and my mom and dad also are now gone. They've been dead quite a number of years. I grew up in the Advent Christian Church, and then later, that's a long story, but
We both were.
yeah, we both have long stories. But I attended Aurora University, graduated with a degree in psychology. Didn't want to go to seminary right away, but I took up the chance of going for 2.5 years to the Philippines to work with students, and both at university and high school level, teenagers virtually. In the Philippines, they go 10 years to school. I think that's changed now, but the 10th grade was the final grade. And so we had a lot of students coming down out of the mountains in the hills of Mindanao because there were no high schools at that time in the outer province. And
I did too.
Yeah, so she went to a private school, United Church of Christ school.
And the missionaries had a dorm in Cagayan de Oro city, the city. So we have the girls' dorm, and he was with the boys, and it was interesting.
So we began to date.
Wait, can we go back just a minute?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Do you have siblings?
Oh,
Yes,
I'm
one
sorry.
one brother who lives in Tucson. He also has a foreign wife. I shouldn't say foreign. She's a native of Finland, and so we sort of are an international family in that respect. They have one son, and who's our nephew, and then we have 2 great nephews.
What are both of you, for both of you, what were fond memories growing up as children?
Climbing trees,
Yes, it was. She liked to climb trees.
We had this, it's called a jackfruit. I don't know if you know. And it had a nice slope. So I would jump up and down in that slope. And then when I would get so angry, because there's 11 of us, I would climb this guava tree, which was a nice climb. But then in the top had a really nice flat area, and I would stay there for hours and hours, just listen, And my father found me there one time, and I'm not gonna tell you what he said, but we always had to come in for dinner. I mean, we always were together, 11 of us, plus whoever comes to help out my mom. So I had to come in and forget everything that.
It was a large family. We have lots of Filipino
Yeah.
nephews and nieces.
So I had a space for myself.
You found your own sanctuary there.
Yeah, I
in that
have my own
tree.
sanctuary. I love my own sanctuary.
And now her sanctuary is our back porch.
Back porch. I love it here. If we had been in an apartment, with the COVID thing, I think I would have gone nuts if I didn't have that little space there, because I can see the green space plus annoying hawk, but beautiful birds, songs.
Yes, until this year, I didn't know there were so many birds in my neighborhood because I was never home during the day,
Yeah.
And
I
had
never
really
knew there were
enjoyed-
so many
Wonderful.
as many flowers. As
Yes, and my flowers are blooming because Dodie, Mama, is back. For almost 2 years, it was terrible.
Ted, what about you and childhood memories?
Well, I think I had a fairly normal childhood growing up in the city. The fondest memory I have is we never wore shoes in the summer. We rarely ever wore shoes. So we went out with shorts and maybe a T-shirt or something, and we could go out and play all day until our mother called us in. My brother and I were 5 years apart, so there was definitely some that age difference was didn't make for a good combination.
Who was the older?
My brother, and but we talk almost weekly now on the phone. So we've come to know each other in a new way over the last 20 years. Yeah, and it's delightful sharing stories with him of our childhood.
Do you all have the same memories?
They sometimes diverge a little bit differently, or converge. I don't know, but yeah, pretty much the same memories. But it was a good childhood. We grew up in the church, and so I think I went to church more than he did, or I was forced to go to church more than he did. But I guess that was my beginning of my call to ministry was probably in junior high school.
And when you went to college and you got a degree in psychology, you were thinking also that you were going to go into the ministry?
Yes, I was definitely going to go to seminary. At that time, it was in Naperville, Illinois, which is just 35 miles from Aurora. Maybe not 35 miles. Maybe it's closer than that. Naperville is now one of the largest cities in Illinois. I mean, after Chicago, which is, yeah.
There's a big difference.
There's a big difference. But now the seminary is on the campus of Northwestern University in Evanston. And it's still a thriving school.
Dodie, you were referring to coming into the town to go to school, and you lived in a dormitory?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and how long was that?
Well, I don't know how long.
Were you there 1 or 2 years?
It was at least 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. And Ted came, of course. And you can eat it out. But I saw Ted. I was working with in Calabria, my town, where the first missionaries were, the Frank and Francis Tooth. We called them Mr. and Mrs. Ngipon because Tooth is Ngipon, and they love that, And I learned from him that because my mom, we were all Catholic, and my mom, Francis Tooth, had ladies guild, so my mom and some friends would go because they get dessert, and she had this beautiful chocolate with green frosting or something like that. And so they would come and listen, and but my mom was troubled, and she didn't feel like, oh, I hope I don't cry.
You won't
You
be
can
the
eat
first
it.
person to cry in an interview.
Yeah, well, anyway. This is gonna. So anyway, I have to stop. She asked, how can I make peace with myself? And I go to the priest, and he tells me all these things. You can take those out. And I come home, and he says, I'm not against Catholic Church, but that's the way they were taught. And you see all the prayers and all that, and she would, and she didn't find peace. And
Yeah. Your mother always said to me, I said, Mama, why did you become Protestant? Why did you receive Christ into your heart? And she said, it was because the missionaries loved me. So that was the crux of the matter.
But anyway, Reverend Tooth said that we are God's instrument, but God is our source. So you can go straight to God and pray. And so she became a Christian. And oh golly, gee. And so anyway, and so we started going to the church. And I went to of course, when I went to high school, I went to the city, and Laura Putnam was our matron, and Lurie was
And
there
my
too.
boss.
And Lurie was there too.
And that's Lurie Watton.
Lurie Watton. And Margaret Helms would come every Saturday, which we hated, to have Bible study. But through her, I received Christ. She was very persistent. But I guess if we didn't appear, then she would tell our parents, But she really was persistent, and I thank her for that.
And she knew the native language so well.
Yes,
Probably
very.
better than any other missionary.
Better than me.
I
very deep
Yeah.
Cebuano.
Yeah.
And she can converse with anybody.
And she still does. I mean, she still
Yeah,
has
even
Cebuano,
when she
yeah.
talks to people, she speaks.
We told her
the
that she
language.
should write a book about her life, because
Yeah.
I mean, she knew the vice president of the Philippines. She knew the ambassador in Washington, who she visited several times. But Margaret also could talk to the poorest of the poor.
Yeah.
She was really
She was.
dedicated.
Alice Croswell. I love Alice Croswell, who is Alice Meyer now, and she's here.
She's
in
here
Good Sam.
at Good Sam.
And we loved her as teenagers, because as young kids, because she loved to have makeup on and curl her hair. So that's what we like about her. So our missionaries, we went through missionaries, and my dad did. I think Dad was Christian, but he didn't practice it. And but my mom prayed for him over 20 years, And before he died, they saw him raise his arms, and my mother knew that he accepted Christ. So it's from the missionaries in the Philippines.
When did Advent Christian missionaries first go to Philippines?
About 1954, 55.
Yeah.
Frank
54.
and Francis had been in China, were kicked out of China during Mao's beginnings. Mm-hmm. Then they went to Japan for a few years, and they came to the Philippines, and then they finally came back to the States, and then they wound up in New Zealand and were killed tragically in an auto accident. But they really gave most of their life to
and
the
he
missionary effort.
tried to speak the language.
Yeah.
the sheriffs were there too, but George, I think, had, well, he's gone now, so I shouldn't talk about him. But he was okay.
So Ted, now you said you decided you wanted to go to the Philippines, or
Yes.
did you just want to go somewhere and that was where they sent you?
Well, we had chapel services at Aurora. They weren't mandatory, but you could get credit for going to chapel if you attended 3/4 of the chapel services during the year. But we had some really significant speakers over that time that I can recall. But Joe Bauckham, who was at that time the executive secretary of the Mission Society, was on campus, and in the bulletin it said, looking for a single young man who would like to give 2 years to the Philippines. I will be in such and such a place, and so I went for the interview, and Joe said, well, there's been one other that has applied. He said, I've only got 2 applications so far. About the time I was ready to graduate, he called me and said, you've been chosen because the other candidate dropped out.
Can I interrupt a little bit? When he was younger, his mom always invited missionaries when they came in Foro, and they came to the church there to talk.
We hosted a lot of missionaries.
So
it was not a new idea.
No, it wasn't a new idea, and I guess it was my further chance to be independent of my mom and dad. I didn't think it was going to take 10,000 miles to do that, but it did. My mother used to write me regularly. I feel ashamed for not writing her more, but I do have some of her letters, and every once in a while, for inspiration, I read them again, and I'm very fond of reading those letters, that correspondence.
So we know where you met, but why don't you
Yes.
tell us about actually meeting each other?
Well, as she said, she
I
was
saw him on the Advent Christian
Mission magazine.
Mission,
Oh,
because I was working with missionaries, Bessie Smith, in the helped translate the Sunday school materials.
Into the science.
Yeah, to my language, and so I saw him. He was so cute, but I didn't know he was so tall.
You saw me in the Mission magazine.
The Mission magazine, yes.
Yeah.
But he's so cute, But I didn't know that he was so tall.
Am I not still cute?
And you're still cute.
Oh, okay.
So in a way, so I saw him first, and I had a crush on him. But then when he came to the Philippines, I met him. He was like so tall, and looked like Jerry Lewis, with lots of zits. And my grandma said, "That's
Unrequited love.
He had lots of zits because he was in Jacksonville before he went to the Philippines, so it was very hot over there, and he's kind of allergic to heat.
Somewhat.
Somewhat.
But
So what is your side of the story, Ted?
all right, my side of the story is I knew the family, and I knew I had seen most of the daughters. There were six daughters and 5 sons, and so it was a good year before I actually saw Dodie for the first time, which is incredible because I had gone for Christmas with her. My brother-in-law, he was in the dorm as a student, and so he invited me to come and spend time with the family. Can you imagine being with 11 brothers and sisters and then finding a room for me in a 4-room house?
Yeah, he had his own room.
But they gave me a room all to myself, and I felt rather lonely. But
10 minutes.
Okay, but I finally saw her at a youth event in Claveria, and so to make a long story short, we started dating, and when I saw her, I said, "She's going to be my wife."
I hid from him all this time. He would come to the dorm to eat, and Laura and Lurie were fixing him dinner and lunch and whatever, because he didn't know how to cook. and I would hide.
Yeah.
I would hide, run to my room.
Well, evidently you did get together.
We got
Yeah,
married then
through one of our
toward
friends,
the end of
his
my
friends.
tour in December of '68, and then we came home in April of '69, and then Dodie did enroll in school in the fall, and I enrolled in seminary. So that's pretty much the story. And then as a result of my seminary education and getting student churches with the Methodist Church, I became a United Methodist. So they were. It was a church that was very good to us. We had some delightful congregations over the last 41 years.
Just 41.
Just 41 years.
And we had come here when the kids were little because we loved St. Simon's Island. So we stopped here because Laura was here and visited this place. That was before everything was, a lot of trees. And so we had been here.
Well, and we
in
received
the 70s.
we received the magazine from the village for many years.
Every quarterly, I think. And when we were ready to retire in 2 years, so we were looking for a place to. Oh, is this part of your conversation?
No. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. And so I was started cleaning out, and I saw this Christian village book thing. What do you call those?
Magazines.
Book. Yeah, the quarterly, I think. And Janelle Robertson, Janelle, she was a nurse here. She's gone now. Her picture was there. And so I started looking at it because Laura always said, check out the village when you plan to, and everything was so expensive in Illinois. We wanted to be with the Methodist community. It was expensive. And so I said, hey, we should check this out, but it's so far away from our children, and hot. And so anyway, I said no. But we called Karen and said, well, you can come, give you a free lodging. So we
bought a piece of property on Wildwood. And then 2 years later we came to start the building of a house.
We're not thinking about long distance.
We decided that it was less expensive. There were 9 homes for sale, and the one on Elmwood. It was a beautiful home.
I told Ted, can we, because we're seeing Jim Skunk in the afternoon, 1 o'clock. So I said, can we just go around and look? I said, no, we're building. And I was not happy with the blueprint for what we chose. So we saw this place. And to me, it's God's gift, a surprise gift for us. And Jim said it's better to have an empty lot than an empty house.
Yeah.
So he made it much easier.
So we're back to our original roots.
Yes. Advent Christian.
Tinged with 41 years of Methodism. So it comes out every once in a while.
Tell us about your children.
We have 3. We have a son they have 3 children. They live he and his wife, Shelley, live in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He's an IT tech. She is an RN. And then we have our next oldest
daughter
is Suzanne Renee. She is married to a Filipino, Rusty Olivari. They have 2 boys, AJ and Christian, and they live in Waukegan, Illinois, where we spent about 9 years during their high school years. And then we have our youngest daughter is Joy. They live in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, so it's not quite as far as Illinois. And
so we see her more often.
And they have two children, a son and a daughter. All of our grandchildren, except for one, are now in their 20s. Yeah.
Are there great-grandchildren?
Not yet. But we
yet.
were to have a marriage in August, but now that they've decided to come here in February to Naples. A destination wedding, they call it. So
February.
That'll be our first grandson to be married. He's 26. So they do wait later with all the education that they've taken. They wait a little bit later. And,
If each of you had advice to give one of your grandchildren or another young person, what would it be?
well, know yourself. And I think the only way we can know ourselves is to know God and His love for us in Christ. Apart from that, I think you get a lot of mixed messages from the forces of this of this age. So that's my advice to them. I've always told them about Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path.
I have, I think I sent you one. I hope you receive it. It said, peace, be still and wait, and know that God is nigh here. So always trust in God in all things. And pray.
I'm sorry. In addition, we do have an adopted grandson.
Yeah, Anthony.
Who's a Mexican young man. He's 32 and has 3 little children. And his wife is also an RN. We've got a lot of medical people.
Medical. And my nieces are RNs, nephews.
Yeah.
Doctor, I have a doctor brother.
She has a doctor brother in the Philippines.
But I won't be.
Is there anything you'd like to talk about in the last few minutes that we haven't brought up?
Well, we recommend people, if this goes out to other people, other homes, that this is a beautiful place.
We had made a previous video about 5 or 6 years ago
Yeah.
with James, and I think it's still on the website.
I think it is too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we talked about how we chose the house and how we enjoy having people to come and visit.
And this is really bad. You can't. But with the COVID, and but this is a beautiful place. But we have to always remember we do have neighbors, not just within our place, but outside. So that we need to help and pray.
Thank you for asking us.
Yes.
And
I was
I'm
afraid. This is my first time to be with a group or anybody.
Well, Dodie, thank you for coming, and Ted, thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
You're most welcome.
It's been a pleasure having this conversation. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to you coming and joining us on another Front Porch Conversation.